For over 25 years, one voice has stood firm in the world of finance, championing gold as the ultimate currency. Frank Giustra, visionary investor, outspoken advocate, has long warned of depreciating paper money and spiraling global debt. His bold prediction: gold could one day rival the dollar as the world's reserve asset. Once a fringe idea, Frank's vision is now gaining traction. Central banks have been stockpiling gold, and with the yellow metal on the pathway to $5,000, investors are taking notice. Joining me today, Frank Giustra. Frank, good to be back with you.
Yeah, this time from London, not Italy.
We'll take it. We'll take it. But,
Yeah.
I've been doing so much reflection during this time, as I'm sure you have, Frank, especially since it's been 1 year since that incredible Oviedo interview where you laid out basically what played out this year. So
Yeah.
people were emailing me saying, now you got to bring Frank on. You got to bring Frank on. But I want to first ask you, because for years, gold advocates like yourself were sidelined by the mainstream markets. Now that the tide has turned, how do you feel personally with gold in the spotlight, Frank?
That's a really interesting question. And, uh, I don't think it's appropriate to gloat. And, on the one hand, yes, it's nice not to be in that fringe lunatic category any longer. That's nice. But
Right.
you might recall 6 or 7 years ago, I told your audience, I said, for those that were cheering for $5,000 gold, I said, be careful what you wish for. Because what kind of a world would dictate $5,000 gold? Is it a kind of world you want to live in? So I'm torn. Obviously it's nice to be vindicated and to feel that you were right all these years about i- investing in gold as an insurance policy, but really it's at these prices and going higher for a reason. And I think that as I've always said, gold should be purchased as an insurance policy. Like if you have a house, you know, you don't want it to burn down and lose all your memories, lose all your belongings, but you sure are thankful you have insurance in case it does. And that's the only way you should look at gold. If you're cheering for higher gold prices, if you're cheering now for $10,000 or $20,000 gold, be careful what you wish for because it's not going to be a pretty world. And that's my honest take on it.
And I remember that like yesterday when you told me that. So I'm sure you've been getting the calls from some of your friends who perhaps are not in gold or silver yet, who are like, now what do I do, Frank? Now I want to get in, but is the price too high? How many times have you heard that this past
Oh
week?
my God.
And what do you tell?
Sure,
Yeah.
over the last, say, month, since gold really went on a tear, it's had so many calls and emails from friends, acquaintances going, they say two things. First of all, you were right. But and then secondly, they say, is it too late to buy? And I have to be really cautious in my reply because, gold's gone straight up, uh, like without a correction. And that's unprecedented. And this certainly in the bull market of gold. So, first I tell them to say three Hail Marys for not having listened to me. But then I say, you should pick away at it over a period of time because you're never going to nail the right price on gold. Gold can be volatile, so I'd hate for people to go in and buy today their entire amount and have it go down 20% in a correction.
Right.
But so if you buy it over a long period of time, pick away at it, you'll get an average price. You may not get the low, but you'll get an average price, and that's the only way because predicting the gold price on a short-term basis is really it's a fool's game, and I've never done that. So that's the way I would do it. And personally, I started buying my gold in 2001 and then again in 2018. And believe it or not, I'm still buying it today. And thinking, given that what I believe, I think gold in time will go a lot higher for all the reasons that you and I have talked about over the years. So that's my advice to people is just do it over a period of time.
That's interesting. So you're still buying, or you just bought more? You're still buying now, Frank, at
Still
these
buying
levels.
now, still buying now, and remember we're talking physical, okay? Here, we want to make that distinction between paper gold, which I think is not going to protect you in a crisis, and physical gold, which will. So, yes, I'm currently buying.
Okay, that's a good point because I just had a debate with Clem Chambers, who was here, and said, okay, when the crisis hits, though, how are you going to move your gold? and making the argument for Bitcoin. Now, I know my reply, but people care more about what you think. What do you say to people when they say, "What are you going to do with that physical gold when the crisis hits?" And you got to get out of Dodge, Frank.
I always talk about geographical diversification, and that's all I can say. It's just, if you want to really, if you feel like the end of the world is coming, listen, gold will go up for a number of reasons, and it can go up a lot if things get really, really bad. But in a worst case scenario where you need to, you know, run away from the country because the country's imploding socially and otherwise, yeah, it might be helpful to have some gold in another country. That's all you can do.
Whoa, let's stop here for just a moment because this is critical. When the next financial crisis hits, accounts will be locked just like 2008, and it will be too late to do anything about it. I've reported on global markets for over 20 years, and what's happening right now is unlike anything we've faced before. The window to act is closing fast, and the opportunity is now. That's why we've created the Private Wealth Playbook. It's free, and it shows you how to move into the proper gold and silver strategies, proven to protect and grow wealth when everything else breaks down. Don't wait until after the crisis hits. Click below or go to dannyreport.com and download the Private Wealth Playbook right now. Now back to the show. Let me bring up a great exchange you had with Anthony Scaramucci on X. And I bring this up because I've heard this argument where he was saying that gold is rising due to demographics, what he says are rich old people that run institutions buying it. But it says as younger people age into senior position, it's going to cause a major allocation to Bitcoin. I loved your reply, and if you don't mind sharing with everyone, because people keep missing the point of central banks.
Yeah, no, I said, listen, I said in my reply, I was very respectful because I admire him. I said, listen, with all due respect, you're missing the entire point. What's driving the gold price are not investors. It's been central banks, and they're still driving the gold price. Yes, investors had recently tipped their toe in the water. They're coming in now, but they're not the driving factor. It's the central banks. We are in the middle of a change of the global monetary system. There is going to be a reset. I've been talking about this for years, well, on your show for years and years and years, that the reset is coming, and we're in the middle of it happening. It's happening in front of our eyes. And gold is playing a central role in that reset. And so the whole Bitcoin argument, again, I don't want to I don't want to get into the whole Bitcoin thing. People get mad at me when I talk about Bitcoin, but the only thing, listen, buy Bitcoin is great. You can make money, get rich, but it's not gold. It doesn't behave like gold. Bitcoin goes down, gold goes up. They're inverse in their correlation. Stop calling it digital gold. It's just not. It's something else. I'm not sure what it is. And certainly it hasn't been behaving well lately. It had a great run, but it's sure coming off quickly now. I'm not here to slag Bitcoin. I could care less. I just don't like it when they say that,
Yeah.
when some of the Bitcoin people say that Bitcoin's going to the moon and gold's going to zero. That is absolute nonsense. And it is misleading for investors.
Let's dig a little deeper there. And I know we've spoken about this in the past, but it's so important to understand of why central banks keep stockpiling into gold. If we look at Poland right now, that has added tremendously to its reserves. I mean, are they adding, do you think, for the same reasons, or are there different reasons at play? Is it really, looking for assets that are not US based? Is it fear of war for some? What do you think it is, Frank?
I think it's different for each player. Unless there are two, the way I see it, there are two main reasons why the central banks are buying gold, and some countries for one reason, one for the other. Yes, de-dollarization is a big one, and that's for two reasons: the fear of sanctions and tariffs, and also the fiscal situation of the United States right now, which is slowly going bankrupt. So that's one. As they sell dollars, they have to replace it with something, and the only neutral currency in the world that is gold. Everything else has other fiat currencies have similar issues as the US dollar. So that's one reason. But then you have the geopolitical strategic reasons like China. Mostly China, but also Russia and other countries that are part of that whole BRICS movement. My beliefs are buying gold as a currency that will play a role in a future currency trading system. And as I've said before, the most obvious one, which I started talking about 5, 6 years ago, is how gold will be used for net settlement on bilateral trades between countries using their local currencies. And the argument always was that that would never work because what is a country which has a surplus going to do with a bunch of unwanted currency of another country, like the Chinese yuan? And I said, the reason China's been buying all this gold all these years is to solve that problem. And what have we seen since? Now you can exchange your yuans for gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. And now China's setting up vaults in places like Hong Kong. I understand it's either going to be the UAE or Saudi Arabia next, and I'm sure it'll be Latin America. They're going to set up these gold vaults around the world to hold their physical gold. And my guess it's going to be to give the yuan the backing that it needs. Not like the backing of the old days where a currency was backed by gold, but in a net settlement scenario where a country has unwanted currencies, unwanted yuans, fine. You don't like yuans? Trade them in for gold. That's the mechanism that I saw coming a number of years ago, and that's happening today. We're seeing it. They're not hiding it, by the way. It's not a secret. It's there for everybody to see. So you just got to connect the dots.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And do you think there comes a level where China is going to say, okay, though, I think we're set. I think we have enough gold to play out this scenario for us now?
I would assume so. I don't think they're finished yet because if if they were truly finished and wanted to make a statement to the world, they would disclose what they really own. And we all know it's a lot more than the 2,300 tons that they've officially reported. You know, as Goldman Sachs reported a few months ago, it may be 10 times that amount. And I suspect, as I've said all along, that at some point when it needs to be disclosed, they will disclose it. At this point, if you're still accumulating, why would you disclose it? You're just going to drive the price higher, which doesn't work for you. So my guess is at some point down the road, when they have really figured out their global currency trading system for settlements on trade, that they'll potentially tell us what they really own.
But then what happens in that scenario, Frank, if we do see that slow down in central bank buying? What happens to gold then?
Well, I think it's going to find a level and stay at a level at some point. And again, that level could be a lot higher depending which way gold is used in the currency system. And again, I'm speculating that it's the way that I've described, but it could be a complete backing to a certain percentage of money supply that would have to dictate a much higher price. But at some point, it's going to reach a level where it's going to stay. Okay, and that, pick a number. I don't speculate on gold prices, but pick a number. And it's going to settle at that level, and then that'll be your price.
Yeah. I'll never forget when you told me that. When I asked you many years ago how high could gold go, and you said, Daniela, pick a number, pick a number. So to that point, let's look at the psychology behind this price run here. I mean, first of all, were you surprised at all by the run up to the 4,000 of how fast it went?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
I
Okay.
really was. I mean, I didn't expect it to happen without a correction, and it hasn't had a correction. But it just tells you exactly how concerned global players are about the state of the current system. I think it's becoming very clear that fiat currencies are in trouble. Western fiat currencies are in real trouble,
Yep.
not just the dollar. Okay, it's not just the dollar, and it's like overnight, like the world just came down from a 50-year-long LSD trip where they were hallucinating that this time it would be different, that a fiat currency could survive this sort of abuse that's heaped upon it by central banks and governments of every stripe and color over the years. So we've had 50 years of a fiat system that everybody believed in. And now we're realizing that as history has proven over and over and over again, fiat currencies collapse to zero. They all do throughout the centuries. This has been a good long run. The dollar, like all other currencies, have been abused with debt and printing. And there's a point when people go, okay, the game's up. And this is what we're seeing today. And what's interesting when you read the media these days is how quiet the Tina crowd has become. Tina, there is no alternative to the US dollar. Remember that? The arrogance, the height of arrogance that how can you replace US dollar? Where are they going to run to? Where are they going to go? Well, it's happening right in front of your eyes. And that, that arrogance has been knocked down a couple of notches now, and they're quiet. No one's suggesting that there is no alternative because they're seeing the alternative unfold in front of their eyes. You're watching it. It's happening in real time.
And now the bank's so bullish. I just read SocGen saying that they wouldn't, now they think, the pathway to 5,000 accelerates, like a $1,000 move could happen quicker than we think. I mean, and that's kind of along the lines of what Jim Rickards has always said, that
Exactly.
once that all of a sudden things accelerate. Why? Why does it all of a sudden just go so super speed here?
Well, what Jim Rickard said is that $1,000 move is very different when gold's 1,000 than when it's 4,000 in percentage terms. And when it's 10,000, if it gets there,
Right.
It's a much smaller move. That's all he's really saying. And yes, so now today. I was just today's Tuesday. I know you're airing this thing tomorrow. Gold's up another $40-50 a share announced this morning. It seems to go up every day. It corrects like by $10 and then goes up 40 or 50. I've never seen anything like it. And I don't think, because this is not investor driven, I don't think this is a bubble. People are saying, well, gold's in a bubble now. It's too late to buy. No, you got to get away from that thinking, because you have to realize that there's a dynamic happening here that is a once in a century dynamic, and you're seeing it unfold right in front of your eyes. This is a monetary system reset happening in front of your eyes. So it's not like investors going crazy and driving the gold price. It's going up for a completely different reason.
And to that point, when you were talking about where's the Tina crowd now, I know offline I was telling you, I'm not going to mention this popular financial pundit on CNBC who, like I said, in the day pumps U.S. stocks, and at night, has has now pushed out a book centered around how 1929 crash is likely to happen. Um, thoughts on that? I mean, it's just interesting to me that these mainstream personas are not talking about, how we could see another Great Depression here.
Listen, things are so out of whack. I don't even know where to start to dissect that concept for you, but these markets are at historical all-time highs. I mean, the valuations in the U.S. equities are beyond anything we've seen before, and it's been maintaining that overvaluation for quite a long time. There's so much debt in the system, and not just government debt, but debt throughout the entire system and leverage through the entire system on these plays, that if something happens, and listen, the world's become very unpredictable, and fragile. So anything could happen that triggers a sell-off, which in a debt-ridden environment can really become a spiral. Okay. Now, that's not to say that this market can't go higher. You know, never underestimate how far a bubble will go. So, I'm not saying that the market's going to crash tomorrow, but my God, there's going to be a correction one day that's going to catch a lot of people off guard, and will really take an already fragile economy, because, the U.S. economy is not as strong as they, l- you know, let you believe. I mean, the jobs are, you see these job revisions last year and now this year again. I know you can't even trust data anymore, but it's a very anemic economy. Yes, very strong in the tech sector, leading the world in technology and AI and all these things, wonderful. But the overall economy is not that strong. And we haven't had a recession in a very, very long time. So when you get an unwinding of a market, it has a knock-on effect on the real economy. And that will happen. I just don't know when. So you can still play this market and make a lot of money and think that it's going to be 1929 forever, but at some point it ends, and there will be an unwinding because of the debt levels, and that's what worries me. Because you get into a debt spiral, they're going to start printing money, what, and then you're going to get this crazy hyperinflation, because there's no other way to deal with an unwinding that, they can't control the long-term rates unless they print money. And so I've been predicting that we'll see QE again, and probably
Hmm.
under this administration. So
Wow.
yeah, I'd be
Yeah.
very careful when I'm very defensive at the moment. I just like think, listen, own a lot of gold, own some cash, and stay away from the overvalued equities in the U.S. There's lots of great equities around the world that are trading at lower valuations that pay great dividends and whatever. Don't chase this bubble. It's just because it will unwind at some point.
A QE like we've never seen.
Well, I don't know when you have 37 trillion in U.S. federal debt, and you know when we interviewed last year it was 35 trillion. If you interview me next year, it'll be 39 trillion. Um, there's no will in Congress. We saw through the Doge efforts by Elon Musk that there is no will in Congress to really tackle costs. America has an expense problem, not a revenue problem, and so I don't see the will anywhere. These deficits will continue to increase. So yeah, the writing's on the wall.
I got to get a question in here about silver. Uh, Obviously, it's having a tremendous moment and run up like gold. Your thoughts in general on silver? The people want to know, Frank, do you like
Okay.
silver?
Yeah, no, I like silver. I'm not an expert in silver, so I want to have that caveat.
Yes.
I don't study silver like I study gold, and silver has so many other applications outside of the monetary, you know, features that it has. And there's all sorts of issues now with we have a global battle in metals in general at the moment. For that, any metals are used for industry, and silver is one of them. And so, I'll say this, and again, I'm not an expert. In my 45-year career, every
Yeah.
time I've seen a bull market in gold, silver follows, and then it eventually outperforms gold. It has, the the silver crowd is a wild crowd, and they love this stuff, and they can get pretty enthusiastic. But there's also a lot of talk about physical silver shortage, and in a short squeeze. And again, I'm not an expert, so I don't want to repeat something that I'm not that familiar with. There's certainly a lot of talk about it, and and if it's all true that there's a shortage and there's a short squeeze happening, it could drive silver a lot higher, like a lot higher, and much faster than gold.
Heck, even Max Kaiser likes silver again. Remember when he told us he sold all of it, but apparently he's back. I'm
All
not
that
stirring the
time,
pot.
yeah, no, I'm not, I don't want to stir the pot, but great that he likes silver, but where was he the last, 4 or 5 years?
I gotta get a question in here about this news came out today, Frank. U.S. trade war. U.S. China trade war has lurched from fragile truce to bare knuckle brawl, about to intensify further because they now want to hike fees on each other's commercial ships Tuesday. Point being,
Yeah.
this doesn't look like it's going to end anytime. Your just general thoughts on the dynamics here between China U.S.
Yeah, this tit for tat is trending the wrong direction, okay? And it's not going to be good for anyone. But understand this, you have to understand Chinese mentality. And if you don't, you're going to, as I don't think that the Americans really have their head around how Chinese people see the world and Chinese leaders see the world. They're not gonna back down. I said this at the beginning of this tariff war. They're
Yep.
not gonna back down. They will not buckle to pressure. I saw this interesting there's a Chinese mouthpiece, I can't remember his name. He's one of the spokesmen that is really aggressive against the West, and he was on some interview the other day, and he's basically said, "Listen, China's been around for 5,000 years. We don't care if we lose the U.S. market. 5,000 years, the U.S. wasn't there for most of it. We've been around. We'll be fine." And then I'm telling you, they will not back down. And now they're actually going on the offensive with the rare earths restrictions. Now these, you know, challenging the BHP with the iron ore purchases that have to
Yep.
be made in yuans
Yep.
instead of dollars, really resetting the stage of how commodities are going to be priced going forward. Already 20% of oil trades in the world are done outside US dollars, and that's going to be increasing. So the petrodollar is coming, the petrodollar era is coming to an end slowly, and it's not going to end overnight. And there's a direct confrontation between the US and China over how the world is going to trade. And I don't think China will back down on this tariff war. And as you see, the Trump administration keeps having to back up. They make these very aggressive statements. Okay, if you do this, we'll do 100% tariffs. The next day, it's no, we're fine. We'll be cool. We're calm down, everybody. We'll get through this. And now they're starting to blame China for starting this tariff war. And say, Besson was on TV yesterday going, I don't know why they're starting a trade war. Starting? Who started this? And so I think China feels that it's got a one in a century opportunity to establish itself as a global power and to demonstrate to the world that they're not going to be bullied by the US. Because if they were to buckle on this, they'd be sending the wrong signal to the world in their eyes that, that bullying works. And they're not going to let that happen. I just, for them, this is a moment in time. And they feel confident enough in their economic strength, their military strength, and their trading relationships with most of the world. They've been very successful at drawing the global south into their sphere of influence. Very successful. So they feel that they can withstand a long trade war with the US and not go out of business. Obviously, it's going to hurt. It hurts everybody, but they're going to take that chance. I guarantee you. I don't see them backing down.
This is indeed a moment in time. Frank, I appreciate you taking time today to do this touch base. We are going to continue this conversation, an important conversation, in person in Zurich at the Precious Metals
Yes.
Summit happening there November 10th. We'll fire in a link. And so I look forward to seeing you there, Frank.
I'll be there.
I hope so. And we'll continue this conversation. And I'm happy for this moment, whatever it means and brings for the gold community, Frank.
Again, be careful what you wish for. Thank you, Daniela.
I know.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll see you soon. And thank you for watching. More great content coming your way. Be sure to stay tuned to the Daniela Cambone Show and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you soon.